In this video, we'll see decision-making statements. So we are going to review the if else, and switch statements. These ones are used to execute a set of instructions depending upon the values of a given variable or data. Let's start with the most simple. The if statement. It will evaluate a condition, and if it's true, it will execute the statement. However, if it is false, it will end the execution and will go in the next lines of code. So let's see an example. Okay, now let's see the practice code for the if statement. I created a integer variable here, a, and now I'll show you the template, the body of if statement. First, the keyword if, this is a reserved word, then two parentheses and two curly braces. This is the body of the if statement. Here you'll place the expression that will be evaluated to as true or false, and here the operations that will take place if this expression is true. So if the expression is false, the program will never enter this to perform this operation, but actually is going to go to the next operations outside of the body of if. So let's try, for instance, it can handle relational operators. Remember, equal, greater than. So we're going to use this. If a equals 3, print the message statement is true. Otherwise, you will continue to the next lines that say nothing. Okay. So it says statement is true because it is true. However, if I place a false statement here, it will not enter this curly braces, so this operation won't be executed, but actually the next one that is here. So let's see an example. Statement is false. Last print in case it is a false statement. Statement is false. As you can see, it didn't execute this inner operation within the curly braces because it is false. So it will continue in the next lines outside of these curly braces. There's one more thing regarding this if statement, and it's called indentation. You can remove these curly braces in the body of if, just if you are using a single operation. That is, if this statement is true, you will execute a single operation. So you can dismiss these two curly braces. However, the next line in which you will write the operation to be executed if this statement is true will have to be indented. That is by one space in the next line following the if statement. So let's see the execution here. In this case, it is false, so it won't execute this statement, but actually it's going to the next line because a is not 0, but it's actually 3. Let's run it. Statement is false, so it's dismissing this one. However, so if I change it now to 3, which is the actual value, it will be true and will be executing this one. However, it will execute this one next. Okay, so bear in mind the indentation for just one single operation to be executed. Okay. However, it is recommended by many programmers that you always use this curly braces because if you are modifying your code, you may feel the need of including some other operations. So you are doing this task um, as a predictive way of knowing that if you add more than one single operations in a later date, you will need these braces. So this is just whenever you find a code that does not have this curly braces but actually has this form. Remember that it is because it is only one statement here that will be executed if the if test condition is true. Okay, now let's review the if-else statement. It is a combination of if, another clause called else, that will help us to implement a block of statements for the two cases of a condition. That is, if we have a condition that is true, we're going to execute a block of statements just like before. However, if it is false, we can also arrange a block of statements, one or more, to be executed in the case the expression is false. So you can use a block of statements for either case. Okay, now let's review in a practice code the if-else statement. We proceed just like before. In this body of if that will include in the format of curly braces to avoid any errors. You place here uh, the operations to be executed when the statement is evaluated to true, and the else part, also curly braces, um, will have the operations to be executed here whenever the statement is evaluated as false. So let's say, for instance, again, print else statement is false. Okay, so here we have if it is true, execute the code inside this parenthesis, sorry, curly braces. However, if it is false, else, it will execute wherever it is inside this curly braces, following the else. Says statement is true because we compared A with 3. However, now if it is a false statement, it will execute this operation inside the else body. Okay, let's now review the nested if-else statement. Mm, Remember that we previously saw a form of if-else statement. Whenever the condition is false, in the else body you can place the statements that you want to execute if the condition or the statement is false. However, inside the else you can place another new test, another condition. So you are not going to just, okay, it's false, so execute the statements, but if it's actually false, you can evaluate a new statement. So it's false, but how about this? If this other condition is true or false? And so you can nest inside the else body as many new ifs or conditions as you want. So let's do a practice code to understand it more clearly. Okay, let's now have a look at this. You can place an if inside another if. So this is the inner if. This is the outermost if. And inside we have also an else body. So we have if and else bodies within an if. We are doing the test of the value of a if it is greater than 0, greater than or equal to 0. So let's place better a greater than 0? If it is, it will enter this part and will print the message it's greater than 0. So it's going to do a second test. Is a greater than 2? Yes, it is. It's 5. So it's going to print this part greater than 2. And here is the else clause. So it will be executed in case this is false. So since it is true, this part will not be executed, will be skipped. Okay, so we are going to execute this first one and this another one only. Because it depends upon the value of a and this tests that we are performing here. So let's going to see, and it says it's greater than 0, a is greater than 2. Okay, now let's do another example. You can use the else in combination with if to include a different test. So let's say, for instance, here what you do basically is, remember that the else has also two braces here, but if you are performing another test, remember that this else will execute whenever the first test here is false. However, if I want to test another different test, a further test, so I add if after the else. So I say else if, I write here the conditional. So if a is less than 0 and two curly braces, and here I place my code. So this will execute in case that a is not greater than 0. So I'm stating here, okay, if it is less than 0, so write this message, less than 0, and okay, it's less than 0. Okay, now let's review the if statement nested in the else clause. Okay, so remember that we had this form of decision making if, and here we have a test, for instance, I don't know, 3 equals to 4, and the else clause here. Okay, so what happens here? This if will do a test of a statement. If it's false, if it's true, it will execute wherever it's inside this curly braces. If it's false, it will execute wherever it's inside this curly braces after the else clause. Okay, so the else clause will be executed whenever the first conditional here if is false. Okay, however, we can also do place a new test here. So okay, this one was false, however, let's do another new test, and if it's true, this part will be executed, otherwise it won't be executed. So the simple else will be executed unconditionally as long as the first statement was false here. Okay, however, if we include else and if and then another test here, this else will be executed only if first this first one was false, and if this expression here is true. So we need this to be false and this other one to be true, to be for these lines to be executed here. So now let's say, for instance, we have a with value of let's say 5. Okay, And now these are this is the code. If a equals to 0, print a is 0. It's not equal to 0, so it is false. This line will be skipped. Now we are going to the next line, which says else if. So we are executing this because this was false. However, uh, it will be executed only if this value is true. Since this value is not, the statement is not true, a is not equal to 1, this will be false, so this line is skipped. And now we're going to the next line and says, okay, uh, if this was false and if this is true, print this message. Now a is not true, so this one is false, and it's going to the next line. We'll be skipping this one. And now we get to this else body. Now, as I was telling you, this single else is unconditional. So if you already have all of these statements evaluated as false, now you execute this one unconditionally, okay? So it will say A is not 0, nor 1, nor 2, because it went through all of these tests here. However, now let's give it a value of 2. So remember what's going to happen here. It's equal to 0? No, it's not, so this line is skipped. Next line. Is A equal to 1? No, it's not, so this line is going to be skipped. And now, is A equal to 2? Yes, it is. So it's going to print this one. And this other will be skipped because the this previous test was true. So there is no need to go to this case in which the statement is false. So it's going to print here. It is A, it is 2. A is 2. So that's it. Now let's review this switch statement. This is another decision-making statement that basically takes only integer variables, and according to the current value that this variable stores, will execute a block of instructions, and then it will finish this process and go back to the rest of the program. So for instance, let's say that this variable stores the value of 1. So in this part of the switch statement, it will evaluate if it is the case that the current value is 1. In case it is, it will execute this block of statements, and then this break instruction will tell the program to cut this process out and go back to the rest of the program. So in case it is not the current value of 1, it will check for other different values, and if finds the right value, it will execute the statements, the block of operations, and then will code this process once it's done. I mean, it executes a different operations for each case, and whenever the process is already done, we'll jump to the rest of the program, okay? In case this variable has any different value than the ones specified in these cases, it will look for a default case and will execute predefined statements for that case in which this variable does not have any of the desired values, and then we'll go out from this process and continue to the rest of the program. Okay, now let's do a practice code for the switch statement. So first of all, this is the format for the switch. We write the word reserved word switch, then two parentheses and two curly braces. So in this parentheses we place the variable that's going to be evaluated. And within this curly braces, the cases on the operations that will be performed depending on the case that is in each case. Okay, so we are going to use just only integer variables. So we created this variable a, so let's use it. So this switch will find what values stored in a and will execute operations depending on that value. So here we write the overword case followed by the value that we want to test to see if this variable stores currently this value of 1, the colon, and here you place the operations that you want to be executed for that case. So I'm going to use printf, and let's write here a equals to 1, and then new line. Once I finish the operations, you can write any number of operations here. I can write more than just the printf, and in the finish, in the end, I must write the word break followed by a semicolon. This will tell that this is the end of the operations for that case, okay? Because we are going to write here several cases. So the next case, I'm going to write the same, the instructions that I want, and will be ended by a break statement to signal the end of that block of operations for that particular case. Now let's write here the case 2. In case the value of a is 2, let's print a equals 2 here, and then break. And now let's write another case, um, case 3, let's say, for instance, and let's print a equal to 3. And I will be evaluating these 3 values only. So in case the variable a does not start does not have the current value of 1, 2, or 3, I'm going to use the default case, and followed by colon, and then I write the operations that I want to be executed in case um, the value of a is not any of the above, that is not 1 or 2 or 3. So I'm going to print here another message in case it's not any of these desired values. I'm going to print invalid value, for instance. Okay, and I place also a break here. So now let's run it. In this case the value is 3, so let's run it. So this switch will evaluate the value of that variable a, which is 3. So in this particular example, it will compare it to 1. So since it is not 1, nor it is 2, it will get to this case 3 and will print the message a equal to 3, and then we'll follow this break statement that will make the flow of the program leave this switch body. So it does this operation, and then it goes out from this switch statement. So here we have a equals to 3. Now if it's equal to 1, it will show us equal to 1. And if it's, for instance, this, which is not any of the desired or predefined values, it will show us the default value, which is invalid value. Okay. Okay, now let's see what happens when we do not place the break statement at the end of the block of instructions. So I'm going to leave this without the break. The other ones will keep it. And let's say, for instance, what's the value? 8, so it's going to be to default. So if the value is 3, for instance, let's see what happens. It's going to be to this case 3, and we'll print a equal 3. However, now let's say that I give this the value of 1, so it should be executing this operation. So let's see. This is what happens. It will execute this operation because it has the value of 1, so a equals to 1. However, since it does not find the break statement here, it will continue to the next line and will print a equals to 2. So that's what happens. If you do not place the break, it will follow every line here till it finds the break statement or the end of the switch. As I was telling you, it will not accept any other data type or variable different from integer values. So remember that character values, data types, can be taken also as integer values. So this is the case also for this switch statement. So now let's assign this char variable a value of a character. For instance, let's say a. Remember that when it's a single character, it just uses this single quotation or apostrophes. Okay, so let's say if a stores the value of a, print a equals to a. Okay, or if it is b, um, let's say a equals b, or if it's c, um, a equals c. Okay, and if it's not any of the above, it will print invalid value. Okay, so let's click run, and here we have a equals a. Now if we change this to other value that is not defined in these values, like g, it will go to default. Remember, invalid value. Okay, so you can use that for either integers, a numeric value, or this single character. Okay, as I told you, switch statement can only accept integer variables, that is the ones as integer numbers, or also the character symbols in char data types. Okay, because if we try to use other types, just like for instance, let's say these float types, that is real numbers with the fractional part. If I try to use, okay, I give it the value of 1.8, and I have two cases. Case 1.8, and case 2.5, and the default. However, if I try to compile or execute this program, I will get this next error. It says switch quantity is not an integer. So bear that in mind, only integer values. Here is one more thing I can't do with the switch statement. For instance, I created a integer value called sal and gave it the value of 18. I can't use for the cases expressions that include relational operators. So for instance, I can say, okay, this first case is sal is greater than 10. No, it won't work because it needs a concrete value, that is a number, or as I was telling you, a constant character symbol, letter, number of special character, but I can't use relational operators here. This switch statement cannot handle such expressions. It has to be a concrete number here, numeric integer value, or a character symbol. Okay, so if I need to do these comparisons or relational operators, I will have to use better the if statement. So that is a safer bet.